My name is Michael Magnuson. I'm the Executive Director at the Penticton and Wine Country Chamber of Commerce.
Can you explain a little bit what the chamber does in Penticton?
Sure. We do a few things to support local businesses. One is predominantly networking. So we create venues to allow business owners, managers, and their teams to get together, usually on a bi-weekly or a monthly basis, where we can connect. We can all share our stories, our successes, our challenges, but really just support for each other. The business landscape is hard, and it's certainly been very, very difficult since COVID and beyond. So nobody wants to see another business fail here. And if there's an opportunity for one business owner to give another some really salient advice, something of substance, then the fact that we've helped bring those two people together is a huge win for us. Being able to recognize businesses like at the Excellence Awards is just so, it's the core of what we do. We see so many people working so hard, not only to support their own business and the growth of their business, but to also support this community. And to be able to take a moment to recognize them as those silent but steady contributors to Penticton and the South Okanagan makes all that work that goes into it worth it. And the volunteers that judge, that go through it, spend countless hours of their time reviewing all of these nominee submissions and have to make impossible choices at the end of the day who wins. But really, if you're nominated, you're doing something right.
Well, I think we all win when Penticton businesses do well.
I think so too.
I think that's a huge part of the industry, like employing people, giving people livelihoods. Especially when we're talking about the tiny homes themselves, I think that is a little bit of the concern, is for local businesses who might be unaware of what the operations looks like. Can you say a little bit about what the chamber stance is on the potential tiny home project, and maybe what you would tell local businesses who might be in this kind of state?
Absolutely. It is very similar to what we heard before the temporary winter shelter came into effect up on Dawson. A lot of the surrounding businesses were absolutely concerned. They were concerned about loitering. They were concerned about crime coming to their area. And unfortunately, you hear something like tiny homes that gets equated to a shelter, and people just think the worst. And it happened in Kelowna as well, and Mayor Dias speaks to that, where there was a lot of pushback from the local businesses because their first one went up in an industrial area, and a lot of those concerns never came to fruition. And that's the research that we've done. So it's not that we haven't heard the concerns from surrounding businesses, but we've gone into those other communities. I've personally gone to OS4 up in Kelowna, which is the equivalent of their tent city, and I've seen the changes that they've made. So, I spent time with their bylaw manager and their public safety director. So all of this has been well researched on our end in order to support a project like the tiny homes. And the tiny homes isn't a shelter. And I think that's where there's a lot of confusion coming into play. This is a transitional housing step for a lot of people that are able to exit the shelters, but they have nowhere to exit to. We know at the temporary winter shelter, those that are staying there take pride. There's been countless neighborhood cleanups where the people staying there are giving back to the surrounding community. They're going out with a broom, with a stick, and picking up garbage because they want to show their neighbors, hey, we care. Thank you for allowing us here. We want to give back in some way, and that's fantastic. And even further to that is the people that have stabilized and then moved on to market housing, which benefits our community in so many ways. One, they're going to be employable again if they aren't already, which is going to help local business. Two, the amount of money that's spent on the first responders, on our healthcare system, that all goes down. We actually see an economic benefit whenever somebody transitions from the street back into market housing, and that's what these tiny homes represent, is that missing piece in our continuum for getting people back into permanent housing. So for the businesses that are directly across the street, um, I feel for them. I absolutely do, but I know many of those concerns don't come to fruition. I think it's just imagining the worst case scenario.
Hmm. And I mean, if we want to talk about best case scenario for Penticton, I'm not sure about the exact financial figure, but this is, I've heard in the millions being invested in Penticton.
Mm-hmm. So you'll have contractors that are Penticton based that will build the tiny homes, that will connect electricity to the tiny homes. Now, these tiny homes don't have bathroom facilities, and that's another. I think people think of these tiny homes like they see on TV, these $100,000 or $200,000 tiny homes with luxury built into them, into a very, very small footprint. That's not what these are. These are essentially small portables with a bed inside, and electricity for heat and for light. If they have to go to the bathroom, they literally have to go outside, whether it's winter or summer, and go to the main the facilities washrooms, which is on the property, but certainly not within their own tiny home. So there's people, especially in the industrial district, that will benefit from that standpoint. Here's the other thing about this is that with this being provincial money, we don't have to, as a city, invest our dollars, our tax dollars as residents. What we will see is more tax dollars. We will see the vibrancy return because right now we don't have enough shelter spaces for everybody in the Fairview encampment. And everybody that lives here and everybody that visits Penticton absolutely knows of the Fairview encampment. You can't miss it. The only way we are going to close that, which is right now having an impact on tourism and will continue to have an impact on tourism, a very, very important part of our city's industry, makes up 10% of the workforce. We as a chamber desperately want to see that encampment come to a close. But as we know through the courts and Charter of Rights, we cannot compel people to leave an area where they're camping if there are no spaces for them in the local shelters. And right now, our shelters are full because there are people staying in the shelters for, I've been told, in excess of 600 days because they have nowhere to move to. So if we have those individuals transition into a tiny home, opening up shelter space, now we can at least give individuals the option of moving into a shelter. If they refuse, that doesn't matter to the courts. The courts are interested in knowing that they could move. And if we give the means for them to move into, we can close down Fairview. And we just saw this in Prince George. The city back in 2021 applied for an injunction to have Moccasin Flats closed. It was denied. They tried again in 2022. It was denied. Why? Because they didn't have enough shelter space. Finally, they brought Heart and Hearth to Prince George. They opened up more shelter spaces on the province's dime, not the city's, and now they're able to close Moccasin Flats. So that's huge. I know that there's been talk about having it as a dry facility without an overdose prevention on site on the property. If that were to be, it would no longer be Heart and Hearth.
And we don't have the funding for that.
Exactly. So who would pay for that instead? The city? We certainly don't have those millions of dollars. And from a chamber perspective, I would much rather see our money spent on new projects. We need twin rinks soon. We know how important the CSSHL hockey tournament is to us. We know how important the Okanagan Hockey Academy is to us. All those things. That arena is going to cost upwards of $70 million. If we keep reallocating our funds into public safety, which is 40% of our budget right now, and if it just continues to grow because we're essentially leaving a problem to just grow when the province is currently willing to come in and help stabilize people, to me it's a no-brainer. We need to redirect our tax dollars back into the community to help it grow, to help it flourish, to keep it vibrant, and to help businesses. We want more customers here, we want more tourists here, and we certainly want more residents here.
Yeah, especially if we're considering jobs too.
For sure.
Yeah, like I'm not sure about, I should caveat we don't necessarily know that it will be a Penticton contractor.
We don't.
It could very much be, but we can likely assume that they're going to be Penticton employees working at this site.
That's a fair statement,
Yeah.
for sure. For sure. Not putting the cart too far ahead of the horse. I would like to hope that in their RFP process that they look at local contractors that can do this. We do know that Greyback Contracting, a fantastic Penticton company, built the tiny homes for the Kelowna tiny home projects. So it's certainly my hope that they would get this contract as well. We also have some really fantastic social sector not-for-profits. And if one of those could get the contract for the tiny homes, I mean, what a boon! Not only do they know the community, but they're great employers, and to expand the number of positions that they have would be great.
Especially when you're, like, just to piggyback off this point, when we're hearing about local employment, especially within younger employees not necessarily able to join the workforce. Like, my understanding, these are good paying jobs, livable wages.
Yes, yeah, that's my understanding as well. We all know that our first job as a young person is probably in a kitchen, probably in the hospitality sector, which Penticton currently has a lot of. I mean, we're so blessed to live between two lakes and have the best weather that Canada can have. I mean, it's really here and just a little bit south of us, and that's it. So we are well poised for hospitality and for young workers to get into the workforce. What this project and other projects like it, and of course other industries offer, is that next step. Now I want to move out of the minimum wage job and work my way up, and that's what projects like this offer.
Yeah, like, I think there's so much benefit, especially from a financial standpoint. I don't necessarily think Penticton can afford to leave this in the cold.
I think, no, I agree with you. It's hard to quantify what that would do. One, it puts a huge burden on our hospital, on the emergency room, because we have dozens of people sheltering outdoors. You know, so now we have risks of exposure. We have wounds that are being untreated and left for infection. We have, of course, first responders coming for any overdoses or any catastrophic injuries. The risk of fire in the winter is so high. You know, people are just trying to stay warm. They're called survival fires for a reason, but they're either using propane tanks that have faulty regulators that can explode. They're doing wood fires inside of a tent, and of course that leads to nothing good. You know, business owners see it happening in their alcoves or against their walls, people just trying to stay warm, so they light a fire, which puts their building at risk and everything inside of it. So we're really dealing with a lot of risk if we don't do anything. And I think doing nothing isn't an option, because the opposite of the results, sorry, of doing nothing is seeing what is happening on our streets right now and in the encampment continue to grow. And it will grow and it will grow because we're not being solution based. And we know, given our weather and our mild climate, Penticton will always be a bit of a hotspot for those that are experiencing homelessness. But we have an opportunity right now to help make a big impact in it. The temporary winter shelter started it. They took 40 people off the street and kept them off the street during the summer. We've had so much of a reduction in disorder around our business frontages. Downtown has seen a huge positive difference. We've had less people loitering. We've had less mess and garbage to clean up. We've had less survival fires. We've had less of everything. And that makes people want to come downtown and shop, right? Because now they feel safe. Whereas if we didn't have the temporary winter shelter, we would have 40 more people in town roaming around without a lot of places to go or a lot of things to do. So to add a tiny home project, there's another 50 people that will be taken care of and given the opportunity to stabilize and then challenge themselves, enroll in a program, hopefully get their addiction under control and become a reformed substance user, and then get back into the workforce. You know, we know we're going to need workers. Every statistic says that Canada is poised for a labor shortage. It might not be that evident right now, but it will be again. Everything is on a cycle. Right now our economy is a little bit down, but it's going to go up. And when it goes up, we're going to need those workers.
And I think it was a really interesting point talking about the optics of having an encampment like that on Fairview. I'm just picturing being a local investor or a local business who's shopping around in BC, and I'm driving down the highway and I see this spot. What does it, like, I don't necessarily know from a local business perspective, maybe you might be able to answer this. What does it say about a community when people are driving through seeing, do I want to set up a business here, and they see an encampment?
It says two things. It says either this city isn't safe or this city doesn't care. And it's as simple as that. So whether you want to set up a business here or book your next vacation here, those are the things that encampment will tell you. Last year, our convention centers between the Lakeside and the Penticton Training Convention Center generated $98 million in economic activity. $98 million. But if you talk to those delegates that came for the convention, if they drove up from the airport, they will all say, wow, you guys have a really big encampment. Because it's such a mass concentration of people in a very small space. And the structures that have gone up there, you can't miss it. So will they want to book their conference here next year? Will they want to come back for a vacation here? That's questionable now. Versus not having the encampment there, I would argue that yes, many would look for an opportunity to come back either with their business or with their family. And that encampment puts that all at risk.
Especially in a vacation market where it's by Canadians.
Yes.
And people are looking around Canada. They're not necessarily thinking about moving or vacationing in other locations. It's how do we invest in local businesses? We're competing with other places, and I think we have to think about the competitiveness of this area. Any final kind of thoughts on the tiny homes?
Yeah, my final thought is make sure that your opinion is informed. Make sure you look at Kelowna, make sure you look at Prince George, make sure you look at other communities that have brought in Heart and Hearth and read about the impact that it's had on their communities before thinking the worst. I certainly don't try to shape anybody's opinion. I want everybody to just shape their own opinion. I just want it to be an informed opinion. And that information is out there. So I really hope that when they look to the other communities and what it's done, they'll say, oh, well, you know what? Yeah, Penticton does need this, because not bringing this in, the impact of that is far worse than saying no to the tiny home project.
And it kind of switching a bit, what's next for the Chamber? What are some things that the City of Penticton as well as the Penticton community can support the Chamber
on? Well, going back to my previous comments, we certainly want to see Penticton continue to grow its local economy. We would love to see more air traffic and better connectivity between Vancouver. And when I say that, I mean through the main terminal, so that if you're coming here for a conference or vacation from back east, which is a huge market for us, that they don't have to leave the main terminal to go onto a transfer flight or leave their airline. And we are a small community that is lucky enough to have our own airport. You know, most communities cannot say that and have commercial flights coming in every day. So we're well poised to use that to our advantage. When we lost Air Canada, that was tough. And Pacific Coastal has filled the void to a degree, which is fantastic. But I would like to see that grow because I think conventions are a great way to introduce people to our community. Supporting the industrial district, especially with what's happening south of the border. Any federal support that we can get for them, we would absolutely advocate on their behalf. And transportation. Transportation is a big one for us. When the highway closes due to rock slides or security incidents or anything in between, we need to have an alternative route to get to Kelowna that is maintained, not just activated after the highway's been closed for 24 hours. So those are things that we're working on. But if there are businesses out there that are having difficulties, whether it's with local bylaws or provincial laws, certainly let us know. We always have our ears open, and a big part of our job is lobbying for our business community because we know strong businesses make a strong community.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being
Thank
part of my
you.
strong community. I've enjoyed talking with you today, and I look forward to potentially being able to build a strong community further. So,
Fantastic.
thank you.
Thanks, Isaiah.